if we're looking for an insider view of what goes on at Kickstarter, what is it, we are in the right place. This is session 3 on our Kickstarter Made Simple series. And today we have an amazing special guest. I'm so excited to have her here. We have Oriana Leckert. She is the publishing director of children's books and comics at Kickstarter. So I'm going to go and ask Oriana to tell us a little more about her. And she has a presentation she's going to share with us. And then we get to open it up for questions for those who are here live with us. Go ahead, Oriana. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, April, it is such a pleasure. Your group is always so passionate, so involved and excited. I really, really love it. So it is an honor to be back here with you, talking to all you folks now and on into the future in this recording. I do have a little presentation. I'll share my screen, go through some slides relatively quickly. So here I am again. I am Kickstarter's Director of Publishing and Comics Outreach. Obviously, children's books are a big part of our publishing category. So hopefully I'm the person you want to talk to. You can find me on the internet at Oriana, BKLYN for Brooklyn on Twitter and Instagram. Just a little bit about me. My background is about half and half traditional book publishing and digital media. I worked at Random House before it was Absorbed Penguin. I've written for Atlas Obscura and MTV News. I've been a fact checker for a book packager, a matchmaker for ghostwriters. And then here on the right is my first book, which came out 5, maybe 6 years ago now. My goodness. It's the result of a long-running reporting project about underground and under the radar art spaces all across Brooklyn and New York City. So first, I will just do a quick little what makes Kickstarter different in the sort of crowdfunding landscape. Kickstarter's mission is to bring creative projects to life. You can only use Kickstarter for creative work. So you can't run a Kickstarter campaign for medical bills, investment funding, charitable donations. Every project has to create something new to share with the world. We believe in that mission so strongly that in 2015, Kickstarter reincorporated as a public benefit corporation. This is a pretty strict legal charter that requires us to consider our impact on the whole world with all of our decisions. Through the public benefit corporation model, we cannot be coerced to chase profits if they come at the expense of our mission, which again is all about supporting and uplifting creators and creative work. We are also the only crowdfunding platform with an all or nothing funding model. A lot of people find this really scary, but it was actually designed with creators in mind. I'm sure you all are well aware at this point, if you've done your homework, if you've made your phone calls and done your P&Ls and you know that you need $10,000 to do the high quality print run of your book that you believe that it deserves. If you were to run a campaign and only raise, let's say $4,000, you're actually in a terrible spot because now what are your options? You're either going to make an inferior product, you're going to have to supply the rest of the money yourself, which if that was an option, you might not have tried to do a crowdfunding campaign in the first place, or maybe not even make the project, which is now, that's a real sad thing for yourself, for all of the backers to whom you've made these promises. So the idea here is that we want creators to take their creative work seriously, and that if you are not able for whatever reason, to raise the amount of money you need to bring this project to life, then you just need to rethink some aspect of it. Maybe you need to spend some more time building your audience or scale back your goals, come back to it with fresh eyes and try again. So that's why our platform is like that. Quick little snapshot of Kickstarter Publishing. 62,000 projects have been launched since Kickstarter began in 2009, and over $259 million have been pledged to projects on the site, specifically in publishing. I also run comics, so if you include both of those categories, more than $400 million have been raised from 3 million backers. In 2020, despite all of the pandemic impacts, each of my two categories saw $10 million more in pledges than in 2019. Because campaigns run for generally 30 days, but sometimes as much as 60, we don't yet have a full accounting of 2021, but we're almost there. And it is pretty clear that it will be the third best year ever in a row for both publishing and comics. And the current success rate for publishing projects is about 53%. I'm going to drill into that number a little more because it is a little lower than I think really accurately reflects what goes on here, but I'll get to that in another slide. First, What are the benefits of literary crowdfunding? This is a platform designed for storytelling. So using Kickstarter, you can really tell the full story of your creative work. And that doesn't just mean the plot of your book, although certainly you want to share that. You can also talk about who you are, what brought you to this work, why you decided that this was the story that you wanted to tell, and why you are uniquely and perfectly suited to tell it. You can talk about your process and where you are in it. There's people on Kickstarter really love to support the creative people behind the creative work. Kickstarter also allows you to connect directly with your readers in a way that is not generally available in the traditional publishing landscape. Backers can leave comments on your work. You can keep them updated on both this project and any future projects. You can tailor your campaign to have reader feedback. I've seen people do a poll. Do we want the red cover or the blue cover? You can use your stretch goals to enhance the product in ways that your backers are specifically telling you that you want. So you really do make this strong connection with your earliest and most fervent supporters. Running a Kickstarter campaign can raise your profile in the industry. A well-run Kickstarter should function like a marketing campaign. So you'll be making a lot of noise. You'll be getting some press if you can. People will be hearing your name and knowing about what you're doing. It's a great way to sell pre-orders or backlist. You can run a campaign strictly for the printing costs of a run. And if you are a more established author, you can use your rewards to sell through bundles of your previous works. You can also use it to test a totally ambitious idea. I was saying earlier that because of the all or nothing model, you have some wild, crazy moonshot thing that is really only going to be possible for a pretty solid amount of money. Why don't you see if there's an audience for that work? Because on Kickstarter, you lose nothing if you don't make your funding goal. You don't pay any fees. You don't owe anybody anything. You can use it as a testing ground to prove whether something is viable for you, for your audience right now. And you can create something unique, whether that's a book and a plushie or, outtakes from your publishing journey, all sorts of different kinds of ideas that, wouldn't really fit in the neat little boxes that the traditional publishing industry supplies for us. So I'm sure you guys have gone over how to design your campaigns. So just go through this very quickly. You're going to conceive your project. You're going to determine your funding goal. The way to determine your funding goal is to find the balance between what you need and what you can get. So doing your homework, making your calls, doing your spreadsheets for what you need, but also understanding what your reach looks like so you know what's going to be likely to be possible for you. We do encourage creators to make a project video, although it is not a requirement. We do see a preference for it. Campaigns with videos do tend to get funded more quickly and to a higher dollar amount, but that's a little bit of a tautology. It's not really possible to say that they're getting funded because they have a video. It's more likely that a campaign that has a video is also a professionally run, well-conceived initiative. So if a video is the thing that's stopping you, you have my permission to not do it. But if you can, it's nice to make one. As I said, the campaign page allows you to tell your full story. You can break that up with headers, with graphics. Kickstarter is on the internet and the internet is a visual medium. So don't forget to, you don't want people to click through and see a giant wall of text. That's not going to be compelling. You want to do what you can with design and imagery to keep people reading down the page. And then you want to come up with creative and interesting rewards. This is, to my mind, rewards are really central to the Kickstarter proposition. It's what makes this kind of fundraising so uniquely compelling because you're not simply doing a pre-sale. You're not just asking people for money. You're giving them something in return. You're inviting them into your creative journey and sharing it with them. So, a lot of people assume that rewards mean swag, that in order to run a Kickstarter campaign, you have to make all kinds of t-shirts and tote bags and mugs and keychains with your cover image on them. You can, swag is okay, but it is also a way that people can get themselves in trouble if you haven't really thought through the cost of producing and shipping all of that stuff. It's also not generally the best way to connect with your backers. Most of your backers would rather have a 10-song playlist of the songs that you listened to while you were writing this book, some kind of, high-end art print of a gorgeous image that's part of your illustrations, or even a cell phone background of same. Really think about what's part of your creative journey and how you can share that with your backers because they want to support you and feel connected to the work you're doing. Nobody needs another tote bag. for outreach and promotion. So here's what I'm going to talk about, why the first 25 backers matter, and also why that 53% success rate is a little bit, I don't think it really tells the full story. So that is true that all of the campaigns in the publishing category, if you average them together, the success rate is 53. But if you only look at projects that have at least 25 backers, the success rate is more like 75%. And so 25 backers, we think, is a really good measure because, that's a little bit bigger than your mom and your best friend and all the people in your most inner circle who are basically obligated to support anything you do. So 25 backers means that you're pushing past that. You're getting a little bigger. So if you can get beyond that inner circle and start to get people who are not sort of required by nature of having known you for 20 years to back your campaign, then your chances of success are tremendously high. So the way to do your outreach and promotion, just again, top line stuff, start with that inner circle and build outward. You do want to send individual emails to all the people closest to you, both personally, professionally, and creatively. Think about who you're going to email, how often, what you will say, at what points during the campaign you'll send those celebratory emails. Emails are the highest conversion rate for backers for any campaign in any category. That also includes newsletters. So if you have a website, you should definitely have an email capture on it. You should be building up your newsletters long before you launch your campaign. So that's email, social strategy. It's going to be different, but related. Use whichever social platform you're the most comfortable with. I do not recommend starting a TikTok the day that you launch your campaign. That won't be an effective means of promotion and it won't feel authentic. So be wherever you have already done the work to build your following and just use that as effectively as you can. You probably want to post maybe every day while your campaign is live. You'll be shouting from the rooftops, both to the audience that you have and the audience that you want. So really think about what you're going to be saying. You can't just log on every day and say, did you back my campaign yet? You want to talk about, illuminate different elements of the creative process, spotlight contributors, talk about your history and your journey. There's lots and lots of ways to discuss what you're doing that are exciting and won't make people tired of hearing from you. The way to get beyond that, the audience that you've already amassed through your own channels, is to think about signal boosters. So are there other folks in your community who have not even necessarily bigger, but adjacent followings? Are there, children's book influencers? Are there podcasts you can get on? Is there press that you might be able to amass, folks who can really help you reach beyond all of the circles that, are yours to deal with? And then people often ask me about paid marketing. I will tell you anecdotally that for literary projects, an amateur strategy of paying some money to boost posts on, Twitter or Instagram does not tend to be very effective. Paid marketing, of course, can be tremendously effective if you have a lot of money and if you're working with professional, marketing agencies. And often that's just really out of reach for, your small or, emerging children's book author. So it's fine to play around a little bit, drop $20 here or $30 there, but I would concentrate much, much, much more on building your authentic audience than thinking about, paid marketing and hoping that things are going to come through that way. And that's it. That's my quick little top line stuff. That's where I am on the internet, Oriana BKLYN. Here's my email address. Please be gentle with my inbox, but you are certainly welcome to use it. April has proven that she runs a very incredible group of people, and I'm very happy for you all to have my info. If nothing else, if you have a campaign launching, please feel free to send me your draft and your launch date a week or so before you go live. And I'm happy to take a look and see if I have any feedback on the page for you.
Yeah. So one of the things I'd love to hear more about, what should people not do when it comes to Kickstarter campaigns, and kind of talk about like common mistakes that you've seen that you'd like to kind of steer everyone away from.
Yeah, totally. I think the most common mistake is overestimating your reach and what's possible for you. So really try to understand who's in your audience and what their appetite is for the project that you're making. Because of our all or nothing model, it's not really wise to run these campaigns too aspirationally. We could all use $100,000, but if you are an emerging children's book writer, probably not going to make that much on your first Kickstarter. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes. More sort of superficial stuff. Like I said, it's really important important to have a visually dynamic campaign page and a really compelling project image. It is obviously very hard to distill your entire project into one image. But the way that we think about this, if you look at a project page on your phone, all you're going to see is the title, the subtitle, then the project image, maybe the first line of text. You want to tell your whole story just using those elements. And that doesn't mean that you should have, 10 little images all pastiche together and overlaid with text in that project image. That would be trying to do way too much, and it would be illegible in such a small form. Really try to think of one image, probably your cover image, that does the best when combined with your project title and subtitle to tell at least enough of the story that people are going to want to click through and learn more. Another common mistake is not being really clear about where you are in your process. I touched on this some, but some people will run the campaign when everything's done, when the book is written, edited, designed, laid out, and they just need to press that button to send the files to the printer. If that's the case, let your backers know that's going to be a relatively quick fulfillment process. If you are instead in the early drafting stages and it's going to take you another 6 months to finish writing and then, putting all the pieces, let your backers know. Kickstarter backers are extremely forgiving of, delays and, supply chain issues and things like that, so long as you are very, very transparent with them. Similarly, another mistake people make is underestimating how long fulfillment will take. I'm sure you're all hearing about the paper shortages, about the supply chain issues. So whatever, deadline you're thinking about, go ahead and add 2 months, maybe add 4 months. As with everything, under promise and over deliver. If you say people will have books in hand in May, but they don't make it until the middle of June, you're going to have some people who are angry on Twitter. But if you say they're coming in May and they get there in March, people are over the moon. They're so excited and screaming about how happy they are. So I think those would be some common mistakes I would try to avoid.
One mistake that I made, my very first campaign did not go well. I way overestimated the amount of money that I could raise or the number of backers that I would bring. Do you have any recommendation on a tool or technique to use to kind of know whether or not you're going to be able to fund the amount that you think you are?
Yeah, I think, the best thing you can do is take your main tier, how much your book costs or whatever it is that, you're funding, the thing that you're hoping the most people will get, divide that into your campaign goal and see what kind of backer number that is. If that's 1,000 backers and you have 25 people on your mailing list and 150 followers on Instagram, that might be an overreach. You want to think about how many people are in your network. Not every single one of your Twitter followers is going to back your campaign. So add up all your followers on your socials, add up everybody on your mailing list, maybe divide that in half. Think about that. Think about, as I said, what kind of amplifiers are available to you, what kind of press, what kind of, signal boosters you might be able to get, and just try to think about how many folks that really, really is that are actually likely to back you. And if they all only backed for the book, have you gotten there? You can also, depending on who's in your crowd, you can add in some higher ticket items in the tops of your rewards. That's a good way to reduce the total number of backers. But, you need to have people who will back them. I mean, it's no use having a $5,000 reward if nobody is going to spend more than $50. So yeah, it's just really a question of being as aware as you can of who's in your audience and, how much they're likely to be able to give you.
So a few questions to bounce off. So my first question is, are there any publishing campaigns in the past few years or ever that just from the top of your head that you still remember because it really jumped out at you, inspired you, and that we should kind of go to for inspiration?
Wow. I wish I had known that question was coming. This Paralympians project was really incredible. And this is one of the women who was part of the Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, which is one of the highest grossing Kickstarter publishing campaigns ever. Paralympians is children's books that tell the stories of individual Paralympians who have made, just had unbelievable, incredible successes over the years. Another big one is Greg Pak. He's got The Princess Who Saved Herself. That's one of his famous ones. That again, it's a 6-figure project. I'm again not trying to imply that is the kind of thing that, anyone or everyone ought to be aspiring to. This is a quite lovely one that we had recently The Adventures of Nakoa and Nohea, which is, directly about legends of Hawaii. I see a lot of these actually people who are illuminating elements of their culture or their language. I see a lot of like Goodnight Moon in Aramaic and like, boba tea for babies, things like that. We see a lot of alphabet books. Here's C is for Cthulhu, which I think is very cute. There's been, W is for wine and all sorts of, I think also W is for witchcraft we've seen. Here's B is for Black Brilliance, actually. Oh, cool. It's a great format to do projects in. Okay, anyway, so that's
those are great to get me started. Thank you.
Oh, and I would say, actually, not to interrupt you, but it is a terrific idea to just go to the children's book category and pick 5 projects to back in advance of your own, even if you just back them for $1, but I would say back the project and also find the author on their preferred social platform so you can really see what they're doing, how they're running the campaign. Look at their rewards, not just to see what they have. You can see how many people are backing at any level. The best thing to do is steal good ideas that other people are using successfully. So I would absolutely try to do as much of that as you can in your lead up.
How much do we need to worry about like holidays like Easter, where it's obviously I wouldn't launch on Easter, but do we have to worry about it like landing in the middle of our campaign, having a day or so that like people might not really be thinking about that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, which you have already pretty smartly answered. It is important to be aware of these things and figure out where they fall and how to be respectful of them if they happen in the middle of your campaign. I mean, losing a day or a few days for Easter weekend in the middle of your campaign is not a big deal, but you don't want to start or end on a major holiday, especially a day off from school, particularly for children's books, because your audience is they're going to be on the playground, not looking at their devices. You also want to be respectful. Don't send, sort of very capitalistic marketing emails on Rosh Hashanah or, something that's like the kind of holiday where your audience is not going to appreciate seeing something like that. So definitely be aware of it, but you don't have to like push your campaign a month in order to avoid some holiday. Every day is a holiday for someone, somewhere, for some reason. So just make sure that you're aware of what's going on and you're not going to lose too much traction or offend anybody based on where those holidays fall within the running campaign.
Any advice or statistics on repeat success?
There's a real fascinating thing that happens where for many people, the second campaign can be harder because that's the tip point from which, I talked a lot about like your inner circle, like everybody is going to feel some kind of delight, but maybe obligation to back you for your first campaign. Once you get to the second one, a lot of those people will drop off. They will feel like, well, I gave her a push last time. Now she's, probably. So in order to make up for that, you will need to have done some work to build your actual audience, not just your friends, to sort of like make that balance. So some people do see a little dip in their second campaign because of that. But if you're doing it well and you're attuned to that and like are doing the work in between campaigns to build and maintain your readership, your audience, your community, repeat creators tend to see dramatically increased success thereafter, campaign by campaign.
I was just wondering, with all your experience, whether you've ever seen any trends or like patterns of projects or small business launches that haven't done well that stands out?
Not really. I mean, it's a hard thing to notice, right? Like I notice when there are suddenly a lot of children's books that are bilingual. I haven't noticed when there weren't bilingual campaigns. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a huge presence in sci-fi fantasy on the fiction side of things. We did notice that there was a surprisingly low percentage of romance novels. And I am, in fact, my H1 big project for this year is about cultivating romance novelists because I think that they could see really excellent success. But I don't think that's what you're asking. Well, I think what you're trying to ask me is like, what kind of campaign should I not run because it does badly on Kickstarter? But I really would kind of steer you away from that sort of thinking, because in some ways it doesn't matter if like no one ever ran a great campaign about a unicorn, learning to speak French. If that's what you're doing, if that's your thing and you love it and you've built up your readership who really want to know about this unicorn learning to speak French, it's going to go great. It doesn't matter if you're the first one to have brought that to Kickstarter. So I think that's a better way to sort of like focus your thinking.
My question is about a shipping rate. How do you calculate that? Because my book is not a single book. It's actually a set of 10 books. And so I was trying to calculate for United States and or for like, I don't know, somebody in Asia or somewhere?
Yeah, you got to make a lot of phone calls. I mean, the USPS will have a lot of tools on their website. And I assume, depending on who your shipping carrier is going to be, a lot of that stuff already exists. But yeah, you'll need to have a prototype of your project so that you know how much it weighs, how big it is. I mean, a 10 book box set, that sounds incredible and big. Shipping that to Asia is not going to be cheap. Depending on what kind of volume you're doing, you could consider looking into a distributor in Asia rather than having all the books printed here and then shipped overseas. You might have, thinking about those kinds of details that can get very logistically challenging. So you could also decide that you're just not shipping to Iceland or to Zimbabwe but if there's an international place where you have a large number of backers or, a large number of potential people who want to support your work, figuring out your costs to get them their books is going to be pretty important. So yeah, I think it's just a lot of research and, calculators and things like that.
So on the website, I'm trying to do the project page right now. And so is there any place that you can add international shipping to it?
Yeah, it should be all in your creator dashboard. There are actually lots of options for, you could go reward by reward, like these things I will ship only to these countries. And, you can combine things. There should be a lot of options to customize it exactly the way you want to make sure that you're not accidentally offering to ship, 100 books to Japan and then you're going to run out of money or something like that. And also here's a link to our help center, which, there's a ton of FAQs there. And then also in the top right, there's a contact us button. So you can certainly reach out to our help desk. I think their turnaround time is like between 1 and 3 days to answer your questions. So if you have, an important logistical issue, ask as soon as you can, just to make sure that they'll have time to get back to you.
I wanted to ask about the number of days campaign should run. So I see people, mostly children's book author, are running a 30-day campaign, but wise it is to run a campaign for 40 or 50 days. Like, what do you think about it? So I want to run a little longer period because being a mom of 2 kids and running a publishing company, it's a lot of work.
Great question. I think we see, on average, campaigns tend to run about 4 weeks. So that's, 28 to 32 days, something like that, largely because most of your action is going to happen the first and the last week, often the first and last 48 hours. And there's a plateau in the middle that happens to every campaign, even the biggest. So when it happens to you, don't fret. It's one reason why we don't generally tell people to run for 40, 50, 60 days, because that plateau is so long. With a 60-day campaign, you are going to be very tired of talking about it. And honestly, your backers are going to be a little tired of hearing about it, So I don't think there's anything wrong given your situation with running maybe like 40 days, but much longer than that, I just think you're actually making your life harder. I don't have 2 kids. I'm not running a publishing company, so I'm not telling you how to live your life. But in general, it might just be easier to do a shorter, more intense burst than to spread out. Like, it'll still be a lot of work for 45 days. So you might want to give yourself a break. I wouldn't do it much longer than that.
Also, I see everyone stressing on getting funded on first 2-3 days. Is it really, really important? Does Kickstarter algorithm really work that way, that if you don't have many backers in the first day, your project will go down?
No, that's not true. A lot of people ask me that. I heard that if you don't get 27.4% funded in the first 73 minutes, all of that is nonsense. It is, of course, it's great. The better you can do, right? Early, that's going to make you feel better. It's going to give you a good narrative, 10% funded in the first hour or day or whatever, but it's not something that you won't recover from if you don't get there. One thing I will touch on briefly, last year we introduced Prelaunch Pages, which can be really helpful exactly for this. I don't know if you guys already all know what this is, but it's just a cover page that sits over top of where your campaign will eventually live. It just says title, subtitle, project image, and has a button that says follow me. And so, anybody who follows that pre-launch will get an email from Kickstarter when you launch. And we see pre-launch followers converting to backers at very high rates. So, now you're stretching, if your campaign's already going to be 40 days, now I'm telling you to add 2 weeks on the beginning of it to pre-promote. But the work that you do to amass those followers will probably pay off pretty well once your campaign is live. So it might be worth spending a few days, a little bit of time before you launch, pushing that out.
So as you told, people can follow the project. So I was planning to do that. But then when I came to know that you can't get the email IDs of the people who follow the project, it stopped me. So I would just suggest that if that unfollow button, if you could also give people emails later on.
That has been requested a lot. I know.
Yeah.
I escalate creator feedback like that all the time. Unfortunately, the engineering team is not listening to me when they decide what features they're going to build next. And there's also, I think with that in particular, it gets wrapped up a little bit in GDPR and other privacy laws. Kickstarter is extremely careful about what information we collect and share. So anyway, it's over my head whether that will ever happen, but we are very much aware that creators really want it to.
Tell us about the Projects We Love badge. How does one earn that? And what does Kickstarter do when you do earn it? What extra stuff happens on Kickstarter side?
Yeah, totally. So Projects We Love is a designation that is determined by our editorial team. There are 150 projects launching just in my categories every week. There are something like 10,000 live on the site at any given time. So you will understand that not every project can get that Projects We Love badge. People put a tremendous amount of stake in it. It's not that big of a deal. It's nice. I mean, if you get it, your project will be ranked a little bit higher by our algorithm and like search pages and like things like that. But plenty of projects succeed without getting that badge. It's much more important, for you to concentrate on marketing your campaign to your own audience than worrying too much about what Kickstarter is doing with ours. Projects that we love are also put into a potential pot where they might get some social promotion or put into a newsletter. Again, all of these decisions are made by our editorial team. So there's only so much say that I have in them. I do get to advocate internally for the projects I'm working with, but I don't have the final decision about any of that stuff. But that is another reason why it's nice for you to send me, either your draft the week before you launch or your campaign link once you're live, just so I know, who you are and what you're working on. And so I make sure I don't, twice a week, I open every single project in my categories, but even so, sometimes I miss things or miss the importance of things. So
I love that about you. You've told us before, I didn't want to automatically assume that you were still willing to do that, but based on what you just said, so you are fine with people emailing you and saying, here's a link to my project and getting that feedback. I've been on the receiving end of it, and you are so just generous with your advice and your time. I think that's amazing.
My question is, a project is a book, or should it be all of these? Because some of them are still just plans, and we've tried to do all of them this year, but how would you define a project for me?
Yeah, you can do it however you want. I would say you just want to think about what makes the most sense to you. If you run a project for, as someone else was saying, like 10 books, especially if the books aren't all done yet, you won't be able to run another Kickstarter campaign until you have successfully fulfilled your first. Yeah. And so if your fulfillment timeline is, years long, that also could deter some backers. You just want to think about the sort of like the plans that you're putting in place for yourself and for your audience based on a project that way. On the other hand, if you wanted to run several small projects kind of in a row, running these campaigns is a lot of work. So you might not want to do all of that work just for, $3,000 for one book that's already done. So, there's not really a right answer here. It's what makes sense for you, for your process, for your backers, things like that.
And just another question I wanted to ask, and you mentioned again, a lot of work. So what is a lot of work and how many hours?
That answer is also different for everybody. It depends on how many people are working with you and what exactly you're doing and how much of the work that you can get done in advance. Putting a campaign together, as we've discussed, you're going to make a video, you're going to tell your story, you're going to come up with your rewards, planning, and then promoting. You're emailing everyone you're sharing it on social media, you're sending out a press release, you're coordinating signal boosters, like all these sorts of things that we've talked about. I mean, could you spend all day, every day for 30 or more days? I guess so. Do you have to? No. But, you do want to have a really clear sense of how much of your time you have available. So, exactly as Priya was saying, perhaps that will allow you to decide to run it shorter or longer based on your needs and abilities, things like that.
My question is, video seems to be a really important piece of it. And so many have said the most important thing is having a really good video. Do you agree with that? And if so, can you share a little information or statistics, if you have them, about how long into a video are most people viewing, so that we can really think about that as we put our videos together?
Totally. So I think I touched on this earlier a little bit. People love videos. Campaigns with videos do very well. I'm not telling you that if you can't make a video, you're not going to succeed. That's not the case. Plenty of campaigns don't have videos and do fine. If you are going to make a video, 1 to 2 minutes should be the absolute limit. We do actually have data that about 50% of backers stop watching after 1 minute and everybody else is gone by minute 2. I actually wonder if that will change at all with the rise of TikTok, now that people are sort of like retraining themselves to watch videos on the internet. But I don't know. That's the statistics that we have. A short, bright, and compelling video that's just a teaser that invites people into the rest of your campaign is the way to go. I've often seen, somebody do a video where they read every single word that then appears in their campaign story. I think that's a bad way to do it. Video and text are different media. You should utilize each to its best. And the other thing I usually tell people is if you are filming new stuff for your Kickstarter video, while you're doing that work, you might also want to think about capturing some other assets. Maybe it's you in the same light, in the same shirt saying, we're 50% funded, or we've reached our goal. Maybe it's little GIFs of like your cover image sort of floating around the page, stuff that you can use during the campaign, on your social media, in your backer updates, and also after that you could put on your website. If you're doing all this work to capture video assets, make them things that are a little bit evergreen that you can repurpose and continue using on into the future.
Do you have any statistics on average funding in the children's book category are typically working from? I've seen personally that those that are getting funded early are typically going in around like 6,000 or so. Sometimes it's 8,000, but like kind of within that budget. I've seen some others go in with much higher goals. And just wondering if you could kind of comment on that. And one strategy that we've discussed in our program is, starting out with that and having stretch goals, at least you're going to get funded, and kind of breaking apart with stretch goals some additional things that you might want to get done.
Yeah, I don't actually have statistics to hand of, sort of average raise in the children's book category, but it doesn't matter too much what other people have done and how much other people have raised. You should be thinking about, like I said, the balance between what you need to make this book and what you can get based on your audience. And it's pretty irrelevant what that calculation looks like for other people. Stretch goals. Yeah, we haven't talked about stretch goals at all. That is an excellent way to make your base goal somewhat more modest and say, well, if I can raise another $1,000, then I can do French flaps. If I can raise another $5,000, I can do an extra signature and extend the story. If I can, sort of add to and enhance the book itself, it's bells and whistles based on the amount of money you can raise. That's, someone else was asking about shipping calculations and stuff like that. So if you're going to make a bigger book, if you're mid-campaign going to decide to make the book bigger, make sure that that's not going to throw off all of your shipping really think through all these choices that you're making. I've also seen folks do stuff like they'll add coloring pages as a stretch goal, or like other kinds of a stuffed doll, or, things like that. Again, just make sure you're not going to get screwed on production, fulfillment, and shipping for any of that stuff that you add. Sometimes when a campaign goes unexpectedly well, people get caught up in the fervor of throwing all sorts of stretch goals in, and that is how you get yourself in trouble. Like, I really am here to help you, not ruin your life. It would be much better not to add that really wild stretch goal if it means that things are all going to proceed smoothly once you're done.
Now, I know that when you're fulfilling a campaign or you get to the end, there are tools like Backer Kit and others that are usually marketed to us as Kickstarter creators. So do you recommend these tools? Do you have any kind of warning about what works better than others, or any recommendations on tools that we should look at?
Yeah, totally. I mean, all of this stuff happens, kind of outside of the strictly like the Kickstarter bubble.
Right.
So, Backer Kit is a very trustworthy company. We have worked alongside them for a long time. I think with Backer Kit, there's kind of an economy of scale. It depends on how complex your fulfillment process is going to be. I don't know specifically, but they're certainly not free. So it's going to be a matter of thinking through how much work those extra costs will take off your plate and whether that calculation makes sense for you. Yeah, there are a lot of distribution and fulfillment partners that you can look into. I don't unfortunately have a comprehensive list of, the ones that are good and the ones that are bad. I think caveat emptor, as with anything on the internet that you can find, the ones that sound too good to be true likely are. See if you can, get user recommendations from other folks, do your research and your homework and try to figure out. And, if you are an emerging author writing your first book or running your first campaign, and you're likely to have, if we're talking about like 100 books, it's probably not going to be cost effective for you to get a partner. It's probably going to make the most sense for, you to enlist your kids to sit at the kitchen table and package up those books and stickers and things with you and just make it a family affair.
It's fun too. It's a lot of fun.
Totally. Get your friends, get a pizza, sit down and make it a weekend.
This has been so amazing, Oriana. You are so generous and have provided a lot of really great information. If you are joining this group here online with us now, or you're watching on replay, take an opportunity to go through and take a look at the links. We'll also share Oriana's email address there. And if you are looking to get help with Kickstarter, we do have Kickstarter Made Simple, a Facebook group that's private. It's completely free. And we are gathering together on a weekly basis to work through campaigns that are launching in Q1. So this will go on probably for another few weeks or more. So connect with us there. Come join one of the sessions and get some feedback on your own campaign. And we are happy to share that, have other great people like Sarah Catherine, who's here today, also sharing feedback as well. This is all about community, and we don't want to see anybody launching to crickets. So we will do our best to support one another, and we hope that you will too. Thank you so much. This is such a beautiful
community that you've amassed, April. Really, I just have so much respect for the work you're doing. And I'm so excited to see all of your projects. So
yes,
yay.
It's going to be awesome. Yay. You're going to be growing so much on the children's book side.
That sounds
it's amazing.
Great.
We love it. Thank you, everybody.